Hey Phil, we're back. You're going to discuss a couple more titles from your book, which I realize I almost never say the title of anymore. You should have heard just what I've seen. You think I know that far by now. I've only done about 100 videos about it.
I
Pop
know, I know.
music at the movies and on TV.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like
You've lapped what we're doing now. Now that you're onto a new book already,
I
so.
was going to say it's such old news, Scott. I'm on to new books now. Um, I got to say I Zoom with my friend just briefly. We'll only spend 10 seconds on this. Zoom with my friend Peter earlier tonight, and he said that I look so different because of the weight loss, which is good.
Oh,
I,
good.
I'll be interested. I'm going to look at this one, then I'm going to go back to the first one we did.
Yeah,
What was it?
back to
2 years
the
ago, 3 years
American
ago?
Graffiti era or Adventureland.
Yeah,
For those,
see what
yeah.
it
We
was
were
like.
doing them alphabetically at first, right? And then
I know. And we should have been grouping them thematically from the start, but neither one of us thought of that. That's no big
yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Um, anyway, so we're going to look at tonight a TV series and a movie, Mindhunter and My Friend Dahmer. Obviously linked because they're about serial killers. If you know that. You know who Jeffrey Dahmer is, but you might not know the TV series Mindhunter. And I realized this might have been a good spot too. It would have been a perfect spot for Zodiac,
Mm,
not
yeah.
just the serial killer connection, but Mindhunter and Zodiac are both David Fincher.
Oh, Mindhunter is David Fincher. I
Mindhunter
honestly didn't know
is
that.
is his project along
Like
with this guy.
producer, I guess, right? And
Well, yes, along with a guy named Joe Parnell as the series creator. I think it's Joe Parnell, but also Fincher directs half the episodes.
oh wow.
Yeah, he did the first two or three, came back at the end of season one, did the first few in season two, and then he kind of handed it over to this guy, Carl Franklin, at the end.
Wow.
But he's heavily involved. Now, Zodiac, we'll get to that later. It does make sense as part of the Donovan Zoom we'll do. But anyway, these two do go together well. I want to talk about Mindhunter. Um, and I have a little bit to say on My Friend Dahmer. So I took down some notes here, Scott. If the screen goes bright, that's why I'm just
Sure.
looking at my notes.
No
So
problem.
it came along, Mindhunter, in 2017. I don't know how I got onto it. I'm thinking it might have been the thread on ILX. I'm not sure. I was thinking too, and I've never read this one way or the other. It may have been partly. I mean, it's based on a book, but it may have been partly given the go-ahead because of the success of True Detective, which came out in 2014. Also very grisly, and also with a funny kind of uh, yin and yang relationship at the center of it between the two detectives. In True Detective, it was Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. Here, it's I don't even know the actor's name, but it's Holden and Bill Tench, and they're total opposites, and that kind of centers the series. And then they bring in a third person into the triangle too, a professor. Wendy is her first name, and I'm blanking out, of course, on her second name. Anyway, so that's the beginning of it. And I'll just say before we get into the music, a couple things. It has many storylines because every episode, not every single one, but many of and there's only altogether, I think, 20 episodes or even 19. Every one of them, or most of them, involve them going into prison to interview a famous real life serial killer, Manson, son of Sam. And I was thinking of the overlap with Mad Men here, Richard Speck. Remember how great the Richard Speck stuff was in Mad Men?
Yeah.
They had the episode with they had two great they talked about Speck, but they had Sally hiding under the couch, and they had Dawn's fantasy about killing the woman.
Yeah.
So this has a great episode with Richard Speck, which kind of in a way becomes the basis for all sorts of problems later with Holden, the one detective. Anyway, so they have they visit prison, interview these serial killers, And then the other two main storylines in terms of, so there are three, in terms of the killing, there are three main storylines. There's this guy, Ed Kemper, real life, who was the co-ed killer. He's in about 3 or 4 episodes, very central to the first season. They have this great ongoing thing with the BTK killer. Sorry, I always get it out of, no, that is the correct order. Bind, torture, kill. I sometimes get them out of order and call him the BKT killer. And they were using him in prologues. I sent you the one with Roxy Music. And they really, like, it's hard to describe. They would have a prologue involving the BTK killer and then nothing else about that particular serial killer. But it was all building up to clearly maybe the BTK killer being the whole entire focus of the second season, because they have these prologues in the first season, and then the second season they have the prologue I sent you, but then they actually visit Kansas and they interview someone, a victim of his who got away, and it looks like the whole second season is going to be devoted to that. But then I think what happened was David Fincher got pulled off the series, distracted. He was making Mank at the time, which turned out to be so anticlimactic. He handed it over to Carl Franklin, who's an African-American director. And he, I guess because he had a really personal stake in it, ended up devoting the second half, or at least the last 3 or 4 episodes, to the Atlanta child murders. And I think by then we're up to 1980. And they really kind of dropped the BTK killer. Now that was a huge disappointment, although Carl Franklin did a fantastic job. He directed this film called One False Move, which was Ebert's favorite film of '92, really good. And he directed other well-known stuff. I think he did a couple of the 6 Feet Under episodes. He did a great job with Atlanta. So it's not like that was wasted, but it ended up being a disappointment because of all these great prologues. But then you assumed, okay, they're going to come back for season 3. They never did. Fincher got tied up with other stuff. I think COVID came along, the cast got tied up, and it was really frustrating in a way because they never went back to it. So there's the Ed Kemper, the BTK killer, and then there is the third one is the Atlanta child murders. But then they have those people I mentioned. They have some lesser known real life killers. And that's mixed in. And this is where the series is really unusual. We don't just get the storylines involving the serial killers. We get storylines, and I don't know how much this is based on actual events or whether they embellish, but the two detectives and the professor, Wendy Carr, that's her name, Wendy Carr. We find out that Tench has an adopted son who is an elective mute, and he ends up getting involved in a really strange murder case of his own, where this 8-year-old kid who has no reaction to his parents, ends up being witness to a killing, and he ends up putting a 2-year-old, and he ends up putting the 2-year-old, gives the other kids the idea to put the 2-year-old on a cross. So it's like really gruesome and weird, and that preoccupies Tench during season 2. Holden, they have this amazing storyline in the first season where Holden gets really arrogant because he's having such success. By the way, I guess I've never really mentioned the series is about the beginnings of the behavioral science unit in the FBI, where they try to profile serial killers to understand not only how they do what they do, but why they do what they do. The end goal being that they'll be able to catch these guys quicker and prevent killings. And then they bring in Wendy Carr, who's from a strictly academic background, to be the third part of the triangle. So Holden ends up, they have some success. Holden gets really arrogant. And that's in the Richard Speck interview, where he starts to get these serial killers to talk to him. He starts talking at their level. And he says stuff that is so unbelievably crude that I won't even repeat it here. And I'm kind of surprised it got on TV, to kind of bring the serial killers into his confidence. And it works. but then he gets called before the internal investigation unit for basically for Richard Speck lodges a complaint that he was messing with his head, but also just being not very ethical. And he kind of gets his comeuppance, which ends up being the focus of the last episode or two. He loses his girlfriend, he gets suspended, and then Wendy Carr, they kind of lose that character in the second season. But that's, besides just the killings, you have these great storylines involving the people. And, I put it definitely in my top favorite half dozen TV series of all time, along with two we always talk about, Friday Night Lights, maybe The Americans now, and a couple others. I think it's that good, and I've probably seen it half a dozen times. Anyway, enough prologue. Let's get to the music, right?
It's new from Ronco. It's Superstars, a great new album of original hits, giant hits.
The thing that will make you laugh, Scott, but you'll totally recognize this, it is 100% a Ronco show.
I was rereading reread your entry, and it's great.
It starts in 1977 or 78, and I made a list of the songs that they use here, and I'll hold off on the ones that focus on. But right in the first episode, they got Toto's Hold the Line. The first episode, guess who it ends with? Don McLean. But not American Pie. It ends with his cover of Crying, which is, totally Ronco.
Yeah.
The second episode has this collage of Tench and Holden on the Road, where they use Fly Like an Eagle. And then after starting with the next episode, it really gets Ronco-esque or Ronconian. It's got the Atlanta rhythm section, So Into You, Baker Street, which is also in Zodiac, weirdly enough. Gino Vanelli's I Just Want to Stop. In one episode, almost in succession, they have Nick Gilder's Hot Child in the City, Meatloaf's Two Out of Three Ain't Bad, and Exile's Kiss You All Over.
Oh, wow.
It's got Afternoon Delight, which is really that might be more of is that more K-Tel, Starland vocal band?
I think it probably might be a bit of both, but it is mid, or it is like, is it 76? Is it bicentennial?
Okay, if it's 76, it's definitely Ronco.
I think it's 75 or 76. So
I think it is 76. I think you're right. So that fits. And then the two things I'm going to focus on, which are Klaatu's, Calling Occupants, and the Alan Parsons Project. I forgot they had a kind of disco hit with I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You, which I wanted to send with you.
Yeah, I remember.
Send to you, but not on not on YouTube. Anyway, so all of those are used well. I sent you the Psycho Killer ending to I think the third episode, which is, I bet you I wouldn't be surprised if it showed up on a Ronco compilation. They tried to stick in new wave stuff. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you. I'm not the biggest Talking Heads fan. Kind of a running joke with Scott and I. But I think it's used really well there. It fits. Obviously, Psycho Killer, but they've just been given the basement. And, again, they're having some success, and their supervisor, who they have kind of a love-hate relationship with, he says, okay, we're giving you the whole basement, and they've got Psycho Killer playing as they take all their stuff down to it. I think it works really well. The first great use of music is the one that I chose for the book. I think it's great. I second-guessed myself a little bit this time, thinking maybe I should have used the Alan Parsons Project. But at this point, they brought in Wendy Carr just as kind of a consultant, but she talks out of school. She talks to somebody at a party who talks to somebody else who gets back to their supervisor before he was going to make a proposal to get them some more money, but they kind of do it without even meaning to. They end up doing an end around with him. So it comes back to him. The higher ups at the FBI contact him saying, oh, we love what you're doing and we want to give you more money. Well, he gets his back up because they're not supposed to do that. He's the one that's supposed to go to get more funding. So he calls all three of them into his office, and it's great because he's really angry at them, but he also wants to tell them, oh, you've been given $250,000. But you can see at the beginning in the clip I sent you, he's saying, okay, but now you're going to have all this supervision, and you're answerable, and you've got to answer to me. And they got this close up, and he says, so, and he uses the great 70s phrase, "Have a nice day." And he says
Oh,
it really slowly. He's so angry at them. And then it cuts to the three of them in the elevator, and they're in perfect triangular formation with, I think, Tension Carr in the background, Holden's in the front. And I remember the first time I saw it, this song starts up that I didn't recognize. And you're going to laugh, Scott. I thought it was some lost glam thing.
wow.
Like I was thinking, is this,
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, I was thinking of, well, who's the one that does like, Steve Harley? Is this
Yeah,
Concrete?
it's sort of that. It's the more kind of like the slightly more proggy end of glam or something, where they
Yeah.
got a little more of that. I could hear that totally. Like there's some
Okay.
glam that has that more music hall slash prog rocky kind of thing a little bit. I
It's
could,
not just me then, especially if, like me, I had not heard Klaatu's cover of Calling Occupants literally since it was on the radio.
yeah, yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
totally forgotten it. So I'm thinking it's this great lost glam classic, or maybe something from one of those weird glam compilations. When I found out it was Klaatu, I couldn't believe it. And it starts up, plays while they're in the elevator, and they both, a couple of them kind of sneak a smile. They're so happy. They're just thinking about, wow, we're being given $250,000. And it continues to play over the end credits. And that's the one I picked for the book. And it's great. I think the Alan Parsons Project, which you haven't seen, might be even better. It ends the ninth episode. I went back and I watched the whole series again. I just watched that ending again. And what happens is, and it ties in with the Richard Speck episode, Holden says something on that tape, which again is so unbelievably crude to get Speck to open up. And what he does is they end up redacting that part. They have to make a transcript for the first time they get called before the internal investigation unit. They have to put together a transcript. But Holden tells us they bring on a fourth guy, Greg, and he's kind of funny. He's not nearly as sharp as the other ones, but he does have a certain way of going about things. And Holden says, look, we better redact this part, the scandalous thing I said. And Greg agrees to do it. And nothing comes of the first hearing he has. But then the ninth episode ends with Greg alone in the office, and he's having pangs of conscience. So he takes the actual tape out of the drawer. The Alan Parsons Project starts up. And, it's just, I mean, if I were to just listen to that song, never having seen Mindhunter, I'm sure you remember the song well, right?
Yeah, I think it's on the I
Um,
Robot album or something. I'm pretty sure.
okay. Yeah, I would have. I don't know that I would have hated it, but it would have been just like all the other generic. So many people tried to latch on to disco
Yeah,
bands. I mean, Alan Parsons Project. I used to have their Tales of Mystery and
yeah,
Imagination out, which was completely bombastic and hearty, and suddenly they're a pop disco. But here it was actually spooky because Greg takes the tape out, puts it in an envelope, and he sends the actual tape off to the FBI, like the higher ups at the FBI,
right.
basically admitting here's what was said during this interview with Richard Speck. And the song's playing, and the camera I think it does this great kind of reverse track where you get this shot of him now in the corner of the office, the darkened office, as this song plays, and he leaves the office and the door shuts. That might be the highlight of the first season. But music is strong all the way through. The last episode has this really, they pull out all the stops for a Led Zeppelin song. It's from In Through the Outdoors. Into the Light. Is that In Through the Outdoor?
It's either that or physical graffiti, or not physical graffiti, presence,
Presence.
or one of those, or
No,
maybe
I don't think it's Presence. I think it's
okay,
probably
then
In Through
maybe it
the
is In Through the Outdoor. I don't know.
which would make sense in terms of the timeline. And it's where Holden goes back to visit this guy, Ed Kemper, once more in the hospital. Ed Kemper's tried to commit suicide because he feels slighted by Holden. He thinks Holden's his friend, and Holden's basically using him. So he tries to commit suicide, ends up in the hospital. Holden goes to visit him, and there's this moment where Ed Kemper kind of gets out of the bed, and Holden realizes that he's now standing face to face with this guy who basically has killed 7 women and had sex with their severed heads.
Wow.
And he steals a glance over to the people who are supposed to be watching. It's actually kind of got an echo of The Godfather. I don't know if you remember that Christmas party where they try to break in, or New Year's party, whatever, they try to break in and kill the Don.
Right.
Or kill, maybe it's a different character. Anyway, it's got an echo of that. And Holden has a panic attack and he flees, and he thinks he's having a heart attack, but he collapses in the hospital hallway. And this Led Zeppelin song it's really kind of psychedelic too. It's playing full tilt, and that's a really important extended sequence. And then the first season ends with, what does it end with? Geez, I didn't mark it down. I think it ends with something memorable, but I didn't mark it down. So music is central to the first season. I wrote down a note. It's not quite as important or as focused in season 2, but it's got that. What did you think of the beginning with Roxy music? Did you find it campy, or? I think it's great.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean, the one thing is, I should look up. It's not the exact version that's on the For Your Pleasure album. I almost wonder if maybe it's from their live, although it sounds too clean to be live. So I don't know.
It's definitely Roxy music though, right?
Oh yeah, no, it is. And that's the thing. It's very close to the original, but it definitely is not. Like, he sings some of the lines totally differently. But I mean, you wouldn't, you'd have to be a fan to sort of know that. Like, that's how close it is. So I wonder if he got hold of some like demo, or it could be one of their early live records and they just, was a good imitation of the album. I don't know, but it's definitely a little different.
The reason I ask is because I think the version of Kiss You All Over, which I just assumed was the original, I think it might be a cover by somebody else.
Oh, really?
Yet it's so close to the original.
I mean, that Roxy music song, I used to kind of have a love-hate relate. I mean, it might have been one of the first songs that really struck me by them. And it was so, as a kid, it just sounded so weird and creepy and stuff. Then I went through a period where I just said, oh, they have so much better stuff than this, and it's kind of campy and silly and all that.
Yeah.
For some reason later, I kind of made my peace with it. And I just like the music so much that I can put up with the ridiculous premise of the song and inflatable dolls and all that, but I really do love the music. Like, it's a great
I think it's the first time I've ever really liked it. I think all this negative stuff I just mentioned, it was always that for me.
It's a silly sort of song in some ways. So.
Yeah, and I think Pravio's influence cursed together. Yeah, makes sense of it. But here it's quite suitable because, and again, try to imagine this is the beginning of season 2. Season 1 had the ending where
the opening
of season 2.
That's great.
I know. Season 1 ended. Now I remember the great ending. It doesn't involve music. Season 1 ended. They went back to the B. Sorry, I pause every time because I want to get the letters in the right order. They go back to the BTK killer, and it's got his great shot. He's got him just standing in front of his house or a house, burning stuff, getting rid of evidence, burning letters and drawings and things. And that's memorable. So you don't know how season 2 is going to begin, and it goes right back to Kansas. And it's got a woman entering her house, and you think, oh, this is going to be the first BTK killing. But I should have known, because they never show killings in Mindhunter. Never even. Actually, the first episode, you see a guy kill himself on screen, but after that, I don't think there's a single bit of actual violence.
Okay.
This woman enters a darkened house, and Roxy music's playing, and she just goes to her kitchen, sits down some groceries, and she hears knocks, and you just don't know. I guess I should have recognized her. I think she was in an earlier episode and should have recognized that she is the BTK killer's wife. But she goes in, and it's a real horror. It's got every horror film cliche of her walking down, the close-up of the hand reaching the door.
Yeah.
She opens the door, and it's her husband, the BTK killer, with this mask on, which is some kind of sexual prop for him. And he's just doing something really bizarre that he uses for sexual gratification. And he's bound, and he's he's cross-dressing,
Yeah.
and she flees in horror, and he chases after her, saying it's just a costume or something, or it's
Yeah.
not real,
Yeah.
or something like
It's
that.
just playing around or something, I
Just
think.
playing around, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a great use of music in season 2. And I jotted down, sorry, a couple other things that I want to call attention to. This is kind of funny, and I wanted to, because of all that Netflix business, I couldn't check. They used Tusk to end an episode, which of
Oh,
course
wow.
made me think of the Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was used really well too. They use More Than a Feeling for a nice scene at the bowling alley. Wendy has begun to. Oh, and I should mention from season 1, Wendy's gay, and they use Fleetwood Mac's Albatross. Great, it's not the Ronco stuff, but they use. She keeps it under wraps because she knows how that'll be received at the FBI. But they use this great thing of her going back to Boston, back to her university, and they use Albatross for about 3 minutes.
Wow.
She's on the plane, and finally she meets up with her partner, and we find out probably what we suspected at that point, but we find out that she's gay. It's got More Than a Feeling in season 2. She's started a relationship with this woman, this bartender, and it's them at the bowling alley. And More Than a Feeling is used nice. This is probably controversial. I think I brought it up on a Zoom we were doing with Howard, and Howard thought they shouldn't have done it, but they used Charles Manson's Cease to Exist at the end of the episode where they go into prison to interview Manson. And the same actor portrays Manson that portrayed Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I see we've only got 3 minutes left. I can finish up, Scott.
Nine minutes.
Oh, okay. Then
9 minutes.
I'll try to move it along so we can get in Dahmer in the same episode. They use at the end of that episode, they go back to Manson's actual recording and Cease to Exist, and it's really effective.
And did you recognize it when it played, or?
I think
I've heard some of that stuff, but I don't think
the words. Yes, it was used earlier in the episode. Holden was listening to it as preparation for the interview. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. It was the first time I think I'd ever actually heard it.
Okay.
They used Dancing Barefoot, which I had forgotten how much I love that. Patti
That's a great
Smith
song, yeah.
So I can't remember how it's used. And then to end the whole series, the series does not end satisfactorily for either of the 3 main characters. In fact, they kind of lost Dr. Carr by that point. When they focus on Atlanta, she's kind of shuffled to the background, which is too bad because she's a great character. They used Marianne Faithfull's Guilt. I don't
know if I know that one.
I didn't until, I assume it's not broken English.
Okay.
It's just one of these things going back and forth, checking in on everybody. It's used really well. It's a song I probably wouldn't, it's a very kind of over the top song. I guess if you love that album, though, it's probably a key song. And that is a great ending to the series. So, music wasn't as central in season 2. There's some very good stuff.
Some good moments.
Now, I'm wondering, I'm pretty sure I can get in my friend Dahmer because, there's not as much I want to say. I wrote kind of a lukewarm review on the blog. Had some good moments, and it had the ending, which I really liked. I liked it better when I rewatched it over the weekend. I think, knowing how fascinating Dahmer is, I went into it the first time expecting something great, and it approaches him from a weird angle. It's all killing literally him in high school. I think it's based on a book. It's based on a comic book. Somebody who must have known Dahmer or read about a friendship. There's some people at the high school who kind of use him as a prop. They befriend him, and one of them actually does feel sorry for him, but they basically turn him into a clown. They want him to do outlandish things in the hall to get attention. They call it pulling a Dahmer. So the bargain is they hang around with him, and they are nice to him, but they want him to do all this crazy stuff. And he's got all sorts of problems at home. And after watching the miniseries, the 10-episode miniseries, which was very controversial, I can see overlap. think I liked the film better. Anne Hesh plays his mother. She had lots of mental issues. His father was a very strange character, not as strange in the movie as in the Richard Jenkins plays him in the TV series. Anyway, the music I wanted to talk about, and I really kind of gave this short shrift in the blog entry because it jumped out at me this time, and I almost went right to Facebook to message you. Like, I can't believe this. I didn't write about this more. They use Badfingers day after day at the
Wow.
prom. At the
Wow. I'm
prom.
surprised. Yeah.
You know
How
how
could
much
you
I wrote
not?
about prom scenes in that movie. And I
Wow.
kind of sloughed it off in the blog entry. And actually, this time I thought it was pretty great.
Wow.
So in terms of timeline, it doesn't work because it's 1978 now. And I think I was right in questioning. I don't think that song was that well known or that revered to actually have been used at a prom 6 years later.
Yeah.
But it works really well. And,
Wow.
it's just like, for me, it's a perfect song, right?
Yeah.
That's
That's
used
great.
well. It's got the Ronco angle. They use Stephen Bishop's On and On at the prom because it's also 1978. They use, this is really weird, both the Rubber City Rebels and the Bizarros.
Really?
Yeah, both of them
Wow.
from that, real sort of famous is the wrong word, but famous in our rock critic
A
world.
compilation or
The
something,
From
isn't it?
Akron compilation. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Gow liked that one, didn't he?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
gave it an A minus. I got it. Used to turn up at used stores.
Yeah.
The Rubber City Rebels song, I don't know that I recognize that, but the Bizarro song, which is used, it's the second song used over the end credits. I recognize that right away, Lady Dubonnet, which is sort of, I think it's a very Velvet Underground type sounding thing.
Okay.
The song I picked is Love Hasn't Been Here by the Michael Stanley Band, which Kirstigal relegated them to one of the appendices in the 70s book. And I don't know how to take this. He calls them Cleveland's answer to Perubu.
Really? Wow.
Where are Perubu from? I thought they
Yeah,
were.
they're from
Cleveland?
Akron. Akron.
Akron. Okay,
Maybe
so
what? No, they're Cleveland actually. What
I
am I
thought they
saying?
were.
So
I think
maybe
there's
that's
some
some kind of weird
put
joke
down
or
in
something.
there. The weird thing is the song I chose doesn't even have anything remotely in common with Perubu. It's sort of Ronco and sort of power pop. Like you'd think it's REO Speedwagon or something. And it's used, it's more the scene. I think it's got a great scene to end the film because, Dahmer hasn't killed anybody yet. He basically has, one bad thing happen after the other. The film is more sympathetic, and that's where some people might hate the film. It's kind of sympathetic to the stuff that led up to the killings. And he's basically out driving, trying to get his head together. The Michael Stanley Band song starts up on the soundtrack, and he picks up a hitchhiker. Now, they come on with an end credit to explain that this was the first guy that Dahmer killed, but I think it was totally unnecessary. You get that right away. The guy pokes his head and he says, "Where are you going? Can I give you a ride?" And I think he says, "What's your name?" I think I even recognize the name of the guy. And that, Dahmer's basically headed out to kill this guy, and whatever you know about him after that's what's in store for him the rest of, after the film ends. It's a great ending, and the song somehow suits the ending.
I feel like I've heard the song, but I can't think of what I just can't.
It's worth looking up. I don't know. It's a song that would. I think it did make the Billboard Top 100. Lower on the chart, maybe in the 50s or 60s. But it's good. It would not. It wouldn't have been nearly as effective if they had used something that would have jumped out more. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. There's a million songs they could have used and made them work. But this one really does. It works in the opposite way as counterpoint.
Wow.
And I would hesitantly recommend the film, partly because, if you don't want to see a film that has some sympathy for Dahmer, his whole life and how he was treated at school, then I could certainly say, I certainly understand anybody saying, I'm not going to waste time with a film that casts him in that light. But
Yeah, if
Yeah,
that's part of the
both
story. I mean,
late
that's what
70s films. Yeah. And the music actually, in the last minute and a half, I'll say the music was, there were some things in the series that caught my attention. I think I almost went back and wrote an entry. That blog sits there, I know, but I've always said if anything really knocks me out, I'll go back and I'll just write an entry on it. And there was some stuff in the series that caught my attention. They presented Dahmer as a guy who went to clubs. And so there was a lot of, because this is now the early 90s when he's doing
Right.
the actual killing. I think it was that. So you get a lot of club stuff from the early 90s or late 80s. I don't remember the exact time, that worked well in the TV series.
Right, right.
Yeah. But I just got to ask you one more time. I know I've asked this 40 times already. You haven't seen Mindhunter, right? Did you start to
No,
watch
I
it and give up
watched
on
one
it?
episode, and then for
Yeah.
reasons nothing to do with
Okay.
not liking the show, I dropped off. But
Yeah.
I think I will.
Okay.
It's only 2 seasons, so I should.
It's only 2 seasons. I'm urging you to watch
I
it. It's
will.
got
I
a
will
very
watch it.
small time commitment.
Yeah.
40 minutes. First episode is 10. First season's 10 episodes. Second episode's 9.
Yeah. No, I will watch it.
Okay, great, great. So we're inside the top 10, Scott. We got, I think, 9 more after this.
Great.
Or 8 or maybe. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
we'll talk again soon. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.